Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of Workers Daily. I am Tabitha King. Today, we're going to be talking about abuse. What's abuse? Abuse, simply put, is the misuse of the purpose for which something was created, or the mismanagement or mistreatment of something that is put within your care. That's how I define abuse. So, how does this abuse manifest itself? Actually, abuse manifests itself in the human context because you can abuse a human being, you can abuse an inanimate object, you can abuse an animal, you can abuse an institution. But now, in the human context, how does this abuse manifest itself? There are diverse ways in which abuse could manifest itself. You have physical abuse, you have sexual abuse, you have emotional abuse, you have psychological or mental abuse, you have financial abuse, you have self abuse. You can abuse your own self, you have institutional abuse. I'm going to take a few moments to give you a little description of how each of these abuse manifests themselves. First of all, you have physical abuse. Physical abuse is the act of inflicting of physical violence or physical impact on a person which is detrimental to their health, to their well-being, or to their physical state. It could be in the form of using your hands to inflict pain. It could be in the form of beating, slapping, battering, most of the time. And this physical abuse is mostly manifested in things like intimidation. It's used in domestic abuse, which is the things like wife battering or husband battering, because there's some ladies that beat their husbands, so that's basically what physical abuse is. You have emotional abuse, which is the act of or taking advantage of somebody, or playing with someone's feelings, or using taking advantage of the fact that somebody is emotionally attached to you, to use them for your own personal gains without taking into consideration how they feel emotionally. That's emotional abuse. Now, you also have mental or psychological abuse, which is the act of denigrating somebody's self-esteem, or making somebody feel like they are worth nothing, or trying to impact their view of themselves, either through insults, either through denigrating language, or either through hate speech, and all of that fall under mental abuse. You have things like financial abuse, which is the art of um, depriving somebody of their finances, taking their finances for your own personal gain. It could also be the act of not paying somebody for the work that they have done, or you yourself mismanaging your own money. That's still financial abuse, especially when the finances that you are taking advantage of could be in the use of several people, or like a community or group of people that are directly involved with that cash. That's financial abuse. Then you have things like corporate abuse, which is actually the art of another person in a corporation mistreating or not respecting the elements of human rights of the other person. It could be in the form of extortion, it could be in the form of sexual harassment, it could be in the form of intimidation, it could be in the form of threats, like you're going to lose your job if you don't do A, if you don't do B. Then you have self abuse. Self abuse is the process where you abuse of your own self, or you abuse the purpose for which you were created in the first place. I'm seeing the tuk guy passing behind there looking for clients. That's how it is when you film outdoor. So, so you have that self abuse. It could be substance abuse, which is actually getting into drugs. It could be inflicting pain upon your own self, being suicidal, and maybe the act of maybe not taking good care of yourself, self neglect. And that also falls on the older person or age abuse, wherein you don't take care of a person that cannot take care of themselves, like older persons and all of that. So those are different ways in which different abuses manifest themselves. Now the question is, what makes one person abuse of the other person? The first thing, or the first major reason why they do that is the craving to dominate, the desire to dominate the other person. When God created man, he said go and dominate the earth. He never said go and dominate all the human beings. But over the years we have realized a tendency, or circumstances where human beings want to dominate over the other person, because they want to take advantage of this, of the some benefits that that person can either get for themselves or give to them. And they use force because maybe the other person doesn't want to comply. So generally what happens is they use these abusive strategies or tendencies to dominate over them, to when I talk of domination, is the act of using force, using coercion, using um, obligatory methods to make somebody do something mostly against the will, or something that they don't like, which will fall to your own advantage. Secondly, you have complex. Sometimes some people just have a complex, especially wife bachelors. They have a complex. They feel that, oh, maybe their wife is cheating on them, or maybe my wife doesn't respect me for one reason or the other, or maybe a boss is feeling threatened, like, hey, my staff is going to take over my place, and so they have the tendency to abuse them, or maybe some guy who ends up raping another lady. They feel like the lady not accepting them is attacking their personal ego. So that's another reason why people abuse others. Some another reason why people abuse others is psychological reasons. Maybe they have some psychological problems. Maybe they are going through post-traumatic stress. Maybe they are just having things, psychological problems like schizophrenia, and amongst other such psychological disorders or pathological disorders, which makes them behave like psychos. So that's another reason why some people become abusive. Another reason why some people become abusive is their background or their past. It has a strong influence on the way people treat others, the way you are treated by your parents, the way you're treated by your friends, the way you're treated by um, the people in your past, could just be the very blueprint that you use to treat other people, and that makes you to behave or to treat people in that particular way. So that's another reason why people abuse another person. Some other people abuse some other people because of ignorance, or maybe lack of proper education. In they have not they have not had a certain level of exposure. They have not had a certain level of education. They have not been properly taught. They have not gone through a proper formation in life to show them how to handle certain situations, which leads to things like lack of tact. You can watch my video on tact that I did earlier. It also comes in with things like poor emotional intelligence, which is the reason why most people end up not solving problems the right way. So yeah, those are some of the main basic reasons why people become abusive. And actually, what happens is that sometimes the abuser is not conscious of the effects of his actions, because of the mental state in which they are, or the mental framework from which they are built. Uh, Now the question is, in the face of abuse, what do I do? The first thing I want to let you know as concerns abuse cases is that the people who abuse generally don't want to be reasoned, because they are, in their mind it feels normal to them. So in their mind it feels just okay. They don't have the mental orientation that makes them realize that what they are doing is wrong. So confronting them directly is usually not the right pathway to follow. Generally, if you realize that somebody is abusing you, it's always advisable to bring in a third party into it. And it's not just any kind of third party. You need to bring a third party that is responsible and that has the power and authority to be able to look into the issue. For example, if you have an abusive spouse, you could try to bring in a marriage counselor, or you could signal this maybe to social welfare, or you could signal this to a legal counsel, or you could signal this even to your parents or to your pastor. I don't think it's a smart idea to deal with issues of abuse by direct confrontation. It's always good to bring in a third party to be able to soften the shock that could possibly come, or some very negative reactions that could come in response to the way some people perceive things, or some ways some people want to get things done. The second way that you deal with abuse is to take distance from the abuser. And when you take distance from the abuser, then what you need to do is to strategize how you can confront them concerning their abusive case, especially when it has to do with physical abuse. During that time of separation, I would strongly advise that you should get involved with the police, because people who are prone to physical abuse always use force, and you trying to use force in such a situations could really not end well. They could either kill you, they could either harm you, or you may harm them, or you may kill them. So it's advisable to bring in the police that can master such a person and bring them to book. Another way that you handle abuse is by going to a place where you could have your mental health. Is I generally I think the best way to handle abuse is distance yourself from the abuser. It could be your lover, it could be your spouse, it could be your maybe your direct leader in your workplace. It could even be a pastor, because they are abusive pastors, all due respect, but they are abusive pastors too. You need to take distance from them first, and then when you take distance from them, bring in a third party that could mediate on the issue and make points out clear. For cases of emotional abuse, I'll strongly advise uh, that you take some time off from your partner if you notice they're abusive. I was able to deal with a certain case where a lady was really financially abusive on her boyfriend. She was practically using him like an ATM, and this guy couldn't go anywhere further in life. But when I was talking with the guy, he was so madly in love with the lady that he wouldn't reason. So I told him, "Hey, bring in a third party into the matter, and try to get reason. You're clouded by your emotions." And that's why I always talk of bringing a third party, because most of the time the person that is abused is locked in a web of the abuser. The Generally, people who are abused, the abusers like challenge. They like something that they can subdue. They like something that they can bring to others. So most of the time, you get they always go in for people who maybe are very empathetic, who have a strong and or financially stable. So the abuser, what they generally do is that they break down your walls. They break down 1 minute, let me